Welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Blacksburg Planning Commission. Regular meetings are held on the first Tuesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. in the Roger E. Hedgepath Chambers at the Blacksburg Municipal Building at 300 South Main Street. Citizens may address the Planning Commission during specified times on the agenda and are requested to adhere to the following. Please speak at the podium, state your name and address, direct comments only to the Commission. Please limit your speaking time to a maximum of 3 minutes and speak only once during a specific hearing or comment period. A wireless microphone is available for anyone requesting assistance. Please silence cell phones, show respect for all speakers, and allow all opinions to be expressed in a tolerant atmosphere. So we'll begin our meeting with a roll call.
Mr. Britt.
Here.
Mr. Ehrman.
Here.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Kassoff. Mr. Cassee.
Here.
Ms. Reinhardt. Ms. Walker. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll begin with our consent agenda, which only includes the approval of Planning Commission minutes from March 4th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so then we will move on to our public hearings. One of our scheduled public hearings has been canceled, so we only have one public hearing on the agenda, and that is Plat 2416 Farmingdale Major Subdivision. It's a preliminary plat at 210 Farmingdale Lane, and we'll begin with a staff presentation from our Planning Director, Andrew Warren.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a major subdivision review, which does apply for subdivisions for more than 50 lots or more. This actually applies in this particular case because there's been a series of minor subdivision plats, and our code does say that it is to be reviewed as a major subdivision if there are a series of minor subdivision plats. It is a subdivision. It is a by right use of the land, so if all the requirements are met, then it would be approved. In this case, they are requesting a number of variances that I'll be going through as well. As we're looking at preliminary plat requirements as a by right use, some of the things that are required of the applicant are to provide a drawing, a scale of the drawing, boundary survey, number of lots, frontage and area, and then also, I'll just read a few of these, the existing sanitary sewer, how it would connect to it, the existing and platted and proposed streets, as well as provisions for stormwater management and in connection to water as well, public water. And so there are other examples, other items that are required. I just wanted to provide the Planning Commission, the public, a list of a number of items that we are looking at in a by right subdivision scenario. So regarding this particular property, it is off of Farmingdale Lane. It involves approximately 108 acres. The development area is approximately 6 acres. It is 420 new lots with 3 remaining lots. There would be a new subdivision street off of Farmingdale Lane. The Farmingdale Lane portion that goes from 460 to the new road, and actually beyond the new road to the extent of the new parcel, would be dedicated to the town and improved. There's also a proposed sidewalk along the new road and approximately 800 foot of a trail that is proposed as well as part of this subdivision. Subject area is outlined in blue. I will bring your attention to what is what I'll refer to this evening as the Bach property here in the middle. That is not part of this this subdivision. Otherwise, all the area within the blue area is. So I'll point out as a point of reference the Bach property here, and then US 460 East here. So the area of Farmingdale Lane up through the end of Lot 20 would be improved, and then the new cul-de-sac is proposed to be improved as well. As mentioned, there are a number of variance requests that are proposed. One is section 5-303, not to dedicate, or basically that it would be to, there's a requirement, and I have an illustration in a future slide to show you that there is a requirement to provide for dedication of right-of-way to an adjoining property, as it's written in the code, and they are asking for a variance as they're not dedicating Farmingdale Lane through the Shaver property. They are showing a dedication to the Bach property, but there are two other adjoining properties that are not shown. Provide additional details on. They're also proposing to construct a T turnaround instead of the bowl cul-de-sac, which does require a variance as well. There are a number of driveways, 5 driveways, that are closer than the 50 feet to an intersection, which is another variance that is being requested. And finally, they are proposing not to construct the multi-use trail in an existing and proposed easement beyond the development. So the trail is being proposed to be built a little bit beyond lot 11 here. So with the variance request for section 5-303, the applicant is proposing to dedicate a portion of Farmingdale Lane to what was mentioned as the Bach property, but not all the way through to the Jimmy Shaver property, as I'll refer to it. And then this is the section of the code. It says, where it is necessary for the orderly extension of the town's transportation system to provide for street access to adjoining property, proposed streets shall be extended by dedication to the boundary line of such property. So in red, you see the roads that are proposed to be improved, part of Farmingdale Lane, and then also the new street of the subdivision. This is the portion in red that the applicant, after the work session, is proposing to dedicate to the Bach property. And these would be the 3 areas that they are asking for a variance. It's approximately 4,000 linear feet to the adjoining property here, 1,900 linear feet to the adjoining property here, and this 400 linear feet picks up, it's approximate after the Bach property. It comes back on to the Shaver property and would be proposed to connect here, and that's approximately 400 linear feet, and there's a request for the variance there as well.
Andrew, can I ask a quick question? Those areas in yellow, would those have to be improved or just dedicated right-of-ways for future?
They would be dedicated 50-foot right-of-ways to the town at this time. It is understood, that these 2 areas, the approximately 4,000 linear feet and the 1,900 linear feet, are long areas and maybe not practical to dedicate at this time, given their length. The 400 linear feet is a shorter distance. There is a driveway or a drive underneath it for a good portion of it that there, that has not been evaluated by town staff of, what it would take to maintain, or to bring to a standard that the town would, be responsible for it, since it would be in town right of way if this 400 linear feet were dedicated. They are proposing to dedicate right of way to the Bach property. As far as the other variances, they are proposing a T turnaround instead of a cul-de-sac. T turnarounds are usually used with future connectivity as anticipated because the roads can extend from that, and it also provides for the ability, or basically if we've had situations in the past where you have a cul-de-sac and there's an intention to extend the road in the future, that once the properties are developed around it, that there's an anticipation that it is not going to be extended. So it does help in that regard for future residents to know that, yes, the road could be extended. So they're proposing this would be considered a T turnaround here at the corner of the new street and Farmingdale Lane, and then also here at the end of the new street. As mentioned, there are a number of driveways that are closer than 50 feet to an intersection. These are approximately 60-foot wide lots, so it is reasonable to staff that there would be intersections that are closer than 50 feet, given the given the width of the lots, as we're with the size of lots that are proposed. This is more of a compact design, so you are going to have driveways that are closer together than you would in a larger subdivision. So staff does see that this is a reasonable request, to have these 5 driveways closer to the intersection.
I've done it today. Sorry.
And then finally, as mentioned, there is an existing easement along the southeastern boundary adjacent to the US 460 bypass. The proposed easement from the end of the proposed trail construction, the trail construction is only really in a portion of the trail. So just to clarify, so as mentioned earlier, the trail is really only proposed to be constructed to the edge of the street, and then there is an existing easement along 460. They are not proposing to build the trail at this time. As a reminder, this basically a subdivision is a by right scenario in which the applicant, the developer, has the entitlement to develop the property under the subdivision ordinance standards and the RR1 standards. If they are requesting variances, those are where evaluation would take place by the Planning Commission of whether it is appropriate to grant that particular variance or not. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff?
Can you go back to the three, keep going back. There, go forward. So the areas in yellow, they're asking for a variance. If there was a totally different design team, would the areas in yellow be the same? Is there something about the subdivision ordinance that says where those paths have to be? Or those were just put on there as anywhere and then said we want a variance so we don't have to put them there? Like, how
those appeared to be, and the applicant may be able to address it best, but those appeared to be the most logical connections to the adjoining properties, this being one adjoining property, this being adjoining property, this being adjoining property. Now, this could be, situated somewhere different to connect to the adjoining property, if it made sense, but, that level design and thought into it. I don't, it has not gone into it. This was just kind of if it was to be dedicated, this would be potentially a logical extension of the street system. This would be a logical extension of an orderly extension of the street system. And then this would as well, and that's what is to be evaluated.
And as I understand it from the work session discussion, the reason not to extend Farmingdale Lane all the way to the next property is unique, is separate from the reason for the other two. Is that right?
Correct.
And what is that reason again?
Well, a part of it goes through the Bach property, and then connects to what is referred to, it's a private right-of-way, but a 30-foot right-of-way on the Jimmy Shaver property, which is here. And as you may recall too, that staff before was looking for a connection to the stable property as well. But through the conversation with Planning Commission, this is what, that it was discussed that it would make sense, if a road was to be extended, that it would be extended along the existing road bed.
And those easements are for a future trail or for a future road?
This would be for a future road, for an extension of a road that would eventually need to be connected. Because we do have connectivity requirements, that you cannot have a road longer than 900 feet without a connection that is being looked at as being extended through the stakeholder subdivision review. That recommendation was extending it to 1,200 feet. But again, these are very long distances because it's a large acreage that we're dealing with here.
So what was there some mention of some requirement in the ordinance that they provide an easement for a trail, or did I miss
Yes,
something?
yeah,
That's different than the.
That is different than that.
But that goes along the same. That goes along the same roads. Basically, it's
Same right away.
the same right of way as the
It
trail
would-
and the.
Correct. I mean, I think if there was a desire by Planning Commission to say that this variance would not be granted and they would need to show a road connection here, we would work with the applicant to figure out where that best location would be to the adjoining property, to figure out where the logic, where the orderly extension of the road would go.
But the road right-of-way and the trail right-of-way are two separate rights-of-way, correct?
They would be, yeah.
One of them, the trail right-of-way essentially goes along the boundary line.
Correct.
So then is there a physical separation between those two?
If this were to be dedicated, then there would need to be. This is an approximate location that I think if the variance were not to be granted, then it would need to be discussed between the staff and applicant where exactly this would be best located, that the easement for the trail that exists along the parcel, that it would not interfere with the future construction of the trail, but would allow for the future construction of the road. And again, there is not a connection, a public street connection close to any one of these extensions of the road today, or extensions of right-of-way.
And this falls under it's a by right subdivision, but it's being reviewed because it's a major subdivision, and we're looking.
It's been a series of minor subdivisions that in our code says that it trips it to be a major subdivision.
So this is 20 lots.
It's 20 lots,
With this 20 lots, how close are we to?
major subdivision. Well, it's really because there is a number of subdivisions, not necessarily, the threshold is 50 lots. So if a new subdivision came in, if it tripped that 50 or more threshold, then it would be reviewed as a major subdivision. But because over time there's been a number of minor subdivisions, it is considered a major subdivision.
We're at 50 now?
So we're not at 50, no.
And that whole rule is intended to make sure people don't try to backdoor into it and avoid the review at the 50, right?
I believe that is the intent of
that's the intent.
of the regulation.
So that's really what it is.
Is there any requirement for to have any kind of projection of what the future subdivision or divisions will look like?
It will be, obviously, from a town perspective, they would have to provide for utilities and for street frontage, road extension. VDOT has asked that to be one of the requirements that the applicant provide when they review the intersection. If during a site plan review process, that they are requiring to know what the future build out would be. Again, I do
Is
think
that at Farmingdale and 460 or internally?
it would be at Farmingdale and 460.
Okay.
And that those VDOT did not have any objection for us moving forward with a subdivision review. They did have a number of requirements that they are going to ask for at the site plan review. And that is included in the packet and in their letter that they provided.
And just to clarify, if it's by right up to 50 without any variances or any other conditions, right?
Right. Well, it would still be by right after 50 lots, but it would require a planning commission
okay, I see.
review.
Okay. But
No matter if there'd been a series of smaller
less than
subdivisions.
50, they wouldn't even have to come to planning commission.
Right.
So we're projecting this will be more than 50.
Well, I think it's a matter of, as was noted before by Mr. Ford, that it really, the code is laid out so it protects the town from there being, a series of subdivision after subdivision after subdivision after subdivision that would then, that really has the impacts of a major subdivision. So that is why that, I believe that standard is in the code.
So that's what's triggering our review is those series of minor subdivisions.
Series of minor
and
subdivisions.
the additional variances requested.
Correct.
Where are the 3 lots? And I apologize, I missed the work session, unfortunately, but where it says 3 additional lots, what are those 3
So
lots?
this is new lot C, new lot B, new
Okay.
lot A. Here,
And those are just proposed by the applicant?
correct.
Okay.
Any more questions for staff?
Yeah, so my concern about the like those variances, or like the trail one down there at the bottom, if it's not built, my default is if it's not built, then eventually the town, which means all the rest of the citizens, have to pay to build it. But in this case, is the anticipation that, new lot A, new lot B, we will have future development where we can pick up having it built as part of the process?
Future projects could build it,
Or if it was by right, they would be required to connect and build it, right?
right, if a variance wasn't granted, then they would be required. But they are proposing to build it to the extent of the proposed 20-lot
So build it,
subdivision.
create the easement, but future construction costs fall on the town.
Correct, and there is current easement already that was already dedicated many years ago to the town for a trail along 460.
Is that decision as whether or not the trail goes along 460, is that made by the owner, or is that made with input from the town's interests. In other
Yeah,
words,
staff looks at the past to the future, and that's why it was dedicated where it is along 460 at that time. I do think that the past to the future is a guide, and it helps us guide where we think it would be appropriate, but it's not set in stone. If there was
this is consistent with what the interest of the community
This is consistent with what is, in the comprehensive plan.
And is the other one that kind of shoots up, is that one also include a trail, easement for a trail, or that's just for a road?
A 1,900-foot long road dedication, I think, is.
No, basically that was looking at connecting to the adjoining property.
And that was just for cars, that was not for trail?
Correct. Yeah, that was looking at, what would be the length if you connected to this property.
That's to connect to a property that is on Farmingdale Road?
Correct.
Farmingdale Road is not truly a road.
It is not an improved public road.
So in lieu of there not being a true public road, that 1,900-foot extension would create a true public road.
Well,
Place where it could go.
create the right of way.
Yeah,
the right of way that potentially could.
Instead of Farmingdale where it lives today.
Correct.
The road, in air quotes kind of thing, since it's not truly a road, but it's a road.
Correct. It could be, where a future connection goes. Again, there is a lot of unknowns, of how this whole area would be developed, and so it is difficult. Beyond the guidance and the code section of saying for the orderly extension of the streets.
And I think it's important to just, as we're talking about the future development, to understand that there are limitations to the future development based on the currently dedicated open space, which we didn't look at, but we did look at in depth at the work session, but we didn't look at tonight, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yes, it is. It is currently meeting its open space requirements. It is. There is a map in the application that shows where the different open spaces are, and it is there are a number of areas that are from other projects as well that are on this property. So the actual open space that is part of this is more over 70 acres. So it is more than 50% of this particular area, and that is because there were other developments that had dedicated open space that are in this area.
Andrew, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did Barrowick's open space dedication that was done away from the site, is it on here?
2.16 acres was dedicated on this site for Berrywick.
I think we better save this for the applicant presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's just not.
I can answer that though. Yes, I mean it is a portion of it, and then also, and that was done by a rezoning, and then Brookfield Manor has a portion of open space that is on this as well.
So the actual yellow lines that we're seeing there would be an actual dedication of a right-of-way at this time?
Correct.
And so that would mean that as future segments of this are done, those would be subject to realignment and repositioning potentially? I guess what I'm getting at is I'm a little confused. I have no doubt that they're doing exactly what they need to do in order to meet the subdivision requirements and to ask for the variances. What I don't quite understand, and this may be a larger question than specifically this, is if you don't have an overall master plan to see where this is going, what difference does it make whether this is coming to us with 2 lots, 5 lots, 10 lots, or 50 lots, or 60 lots? Right. If we don't really see other than it's a tool to assure that there's a dedication of a right-of-way to the next property. Is that?
Correct, right.
I think a lot of the questions we have about the alignment of the bike trail and stuff like that's because we don't have a master plan or at least it's some sort of a plan.
Okay,
Not
right.
that they're required to do that.
Yeah. Well, and what we do have is the Path to the Future that does show a future connector road from the existing intersection at Farmingdale Lane and 460 to the Meadowbrook area, further into the Toms Creek Basin, and that is on our Paths to the Future. That is a guide for where a road could go in the future. Again, it is a lot of area to cover, and you know, as far as a more local circuited plan for a road system, that we do not have that. We are, you know, we do have the Toms Creek Basin study that we are looking at, you know, for some guidance on starting to develop how would areas be developed in a logical manner. I do think that, you know, as we all know, Farmingdale Lane and 460 is, you know, whether that, you know, that is an intersection that it does have limitations, you know, to support, you know, a lot of trips in the future, you know. And that would be obviously a question to the Virginia Department of Transportation each time there is a proposed development. And again, the wording in quotations at the second bullet point, are, you know, is what is in the code about kind of how we are to look at this, and I think staff is, you know, looks to the comprehensive plan, you know, for guidance when looking at dedications and proposed dedications and working with applicants.
Andrew, this might be a silly question, but what's the harm in providing those dedicated pieces now?
Well,
Since the requirement isn't to build a road, it's to provide a dedication for a potential future road. I'm just, what's the downside to requiring
I guess
that?
it is a large area compared to most subdivisions where it may be a 50, 75-foot stretch to connect to an adjoining property. This becomes the dedication to the town of a lot of acreage for an area that again, we don't have a master plan for of where the road would best be suited. It does, there is the advantage of providing for potential future connections, though, and maybe that right-of-way could get relocated. You know, so there are different ways to look at it. I do think that this is greater acreage than we typically look at, and so we are looking at larger distances between the proposed development area and the adjoining properties, which, you know, if you look at just the square footage of, you know, that 50 linear feet, you know, times 50, or the other, you know, times the 50 foot of dedicated right-of-way, the width that we would require, that is quite a bit of acreage, and then that would be owned by the town. And you know, what is happening on that land, you know, for the foreseeable future is just a lot of acreage that is sitting there that the town would have to maintain, or, you know, it's a little unclear what our level of responsibility would be if it was dedicated to the town and still in farmland use, or over a gravel roadway.
But this makes it a more official mark on a piece of paper than the mark that's on the Paths to the Future document.
Absolutely, this would be a dedication of you know, of right away. The town would have the right to that would be a public right of way that the town
And then at
is
the time
responsible for.
the additional design is done, when it's shown that it's beneficial to move this right-of-way to a different location because of topography or whatever issues, then that can happen at that time. But this just assures you that you have a connection to the next property.
Right, I would think that the landowner at that time would have to be amenable to the change, though. Yeah.
But the variance that we're considering is that they don't have to build a connection. It's not that they don't have to commit to giving the town the right of way, or are we considering the variance that they don't have to give the town the right of way and there might not be any connection, or are we considering the variance that they don't have to build a connection to something that isn't particularly useful?
Again, yeah, so the code reads as proposed streets shall be extended by dedication to the boundary line of such property. I think that has been done by just right-of-way vacation, or excuse me, right-of-way dedication before. And I think in some smaller instances it has been done by actually building the road to the adjoining property line. So I think both those options are on the table. Yeah, I mean,
I guess to follow on Michael, so I think we all appreciate the idea of not building the road, but having the road dedicated so it's a mark on the piece of paper, so it's down there. So, yeah, what are we discussing? Are we saying dedicate the easement, but don't build it? Or are we saying you don't need to do the easement, and obviously you don't have to build it, right?
The latter is what we're
Asking
discussing.
for the latter.
yeah.
The latter being that they're asking for, they came up with this connection, which is not necessarily based on too much, but except for it's at the edge of the property. And they're saying that we not only don't want to build this connection because it's not a connection to anything, but we don't want to dedicate the land to the town. And you're saying, or you're implying, that the town might not know what to do with it anyway? It's unclear as to what the town would do in the next 50 years.
There's a few scenarios here. The road could be built, and then it would be dedicated, within a right-of-way. And then we wouldn't necessarily, you could have a road that doesn't connect to anything in a very long road. You could just require the dedication of the right-of-way without a road, or that has been perceived as, in the past as recognizing that as still consistent with the section, even if the road isn't built, but the right-of-way is dedicated, or like their variance is requesting that the right-of-way is not dedicated at all. And that,
What's the commitment that it'll be if it's not dedicated? It's a
Right, there's none.
There is none.
there is not that that there would be potentially future development that then would implicate other requirements that then there would be an opportunity to dedicate that right away at that time potentially, but that is a risk, and I think that has been part of the the staff's consideration from the initial writing of the staff report through, after the work session when the applicant put forward that they would dedicate the area between the road and the Bach property, so between here and the Bach property.
okay.
And they would dedicate that as right-of-way, but would not build that portion of road, is what is being proposed right now.
And does this variance apply only to this phase of the building, or would it apply to all future phases of building in the subdivision? In other words, if we exempt the owner from dedicating these roads now, are they exempt in the future if they build 100 or 200 more units?
No, that would be a new question. So they would
But
not
when
be, they would not
I
be
need to know
exempt.
the answer to that in order to understand the variance we're discussing now.
No, he's saying that it would come back for
It
our
would come-
review.
Well, it would be. It would
come back
trigger
for
another
review.
review. So the variance only
It would be by
applies,
right.
the variance only applies to this moment in time and this particular
Correct,
piece of the development.
correct.
Okay, that's very helpful, thanks.
Andrew, could you go to the, I'm sorry, we're getting ready to, the map with the red roads on it? So if that is built and improved, Farmingdale is improved up to that, that all becomes town maintained
Correct.
in just those parts?
Just these.
Because everything beyond that is private property, so to speak.
The applicant is proposing to dedicate the right-of-way,
But dedicate but not build.
this year, but not build.
So if that gets built in the future, that's, the town is building that?
Potentially, or if it'd be in the right-of-way, and if there was another subdivision, or someone were to develop another property that would connect to that, they would be responsible for improving the road within the right-of-way.
That's on the downhill side of that slope, but the new subdivision road is kind of at the top of the hill, isn't it?
As best as I understand.
Pretty much, yeah.
The applicant may be able to speak to that better as well, as far as the conditions beyond the subdivision. And I believe the public comment has addressed that as well.
So, do you know of other examples where the town has a right-of-way but has essentially in perpetuity, not in perpetuity, but until further notice, allowed the, contractually or just by handshake, allowed the property owner to farm that or do what they want until some future time when the town revokes that? In other words, gives a license to that? Is that something that that the town does?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is. Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have a lot of immediate experience with that. I do believe like the North Main subdivision in that area that does have a dedicated roadway that is currently being farmed. I mean, it also it's platted for lots as well. A good portion of it.
But at least
That's the north side subdivision. I forget which phase it is, but
there is some precedent where the town would retain the future right to connect.
Yeah.
The property owner would be able to, for the foreseeable future, until there was a need for a connection, the town wouldn't be responsible for the property, and the current property owner would have the rights to, within reason, continue to kind of work the land.
Correct. I mean, that is the way that it has been happening at the north side development, and I think that is the last major subdivision that was before Planning Commission at some point last year, I believe.
Yeah, it's like Progress, right? It was the Progress extension that would have brought it all the way around to connect to North Main, right?
Correct,
That's the
yes.
section that's not built.
Correct.
Yeah.
But that also, getting back to Blaine's point, is that's a master plan that exists, so we have some idea of what that might look like in the future.
But it was informed originally by the transportation plan, because that Progress Street connection over to Main Street was always on the transportation map. I don't know what's here, so.
And so I'm sorry, I apologize that I don't know more about the past of the future plan, but somewhere there is a town document that shows some sort of line going across this as an intention to make a road go from Tom's Creek or wherever back to Farmingdale.
Correct. Yeah, it's within the comprehensive plan. It's one of the we have a series of past to the future maps, and it is one of them that shows future roadways.
And so the intention to extend what they're proposing to build now to their property line is consistent with that intention.
Correct.
But past to the future is a trail, not a road.
It shows a future roadway.
Oh, okay.
That would be a collector road that would connect through the Toms Creek Basin. Again, the alignment is conceptual on the map.
I'm starting to get a little better grip on this now. So I'm more comfortable knowing that there is some town document that the town staff can point to with future developers and say, the intention is to have a road come through this somewhere. And that's what we're discussing now. Certainly, I'd rather have the flexibility of being able to determine where that road is at the time when the development's being proposed, as opposed to asking for a dedicated right-of-way right now that's unbuildable or it's not consistent with what may actually make sense to do on the remainder of the property.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, friends, we shall move on to the applicant presentation. That's John Neal of Foresight Design Services.
Give you a second to let your head stop spinning. I've got a presentation here. I'd be happy to answer all of those questions, but I want to go through my presentation quickly. John Neal, Foresight Design, 1260 Radford Street, Christiansburg. Mr. Lucas is here tonight. I'm not sure. I don't think Mr. Chuck Shaver is here tonight. He's out of town, I believe. We've done the preliminary engineering surveying, submitted this by right subdivision plat with the variance requests to the town. Andrew went through all of this. I think one of the things to keep in mind, we're talking, the overall thing is 108 acres. What I would call the effective area of the subdivision is about a little less than 6 acres. So that's kind of what we're actually working on and doing. 23 lots, 20 of those are what I call effective area subdivision lots, 7,000 to 9,000 square feet. We are dedicating, Ms. Jones, you mentioned that, we're dedicating more than 50% open space, and I've got a slide here to kind of show you that, public water and public sewer to the site that Mr. Lucas is extending across 460 to serve the site, and we've worked with the town engineering staff on both the engineering or the water and sewer connections and how those will go, and setting up for, at some point in the future, whether it's 2 years or 20 years or 50 years, some extension and further into the Toms Creek Basin. Town public street that we are dedicating on both, and I'm talking about just right here on the Farmingdale portion, not the new subdivision street, but the Farmingdale portion. Right now, that Farmingdale is about 829 feet from the intersection with 460 all the way to the Jimmy Shaver land, which is that past the Bach property. And we're developing and dedicating and building and improving and turning over to the town 665 feet of that possible 829 feet. And so then the town will take over in a dedicated public right-of-way with a built public street 665 feet of that. That is now being maintained by all the homeowners and property owners back on Farmingdale Lane. So this is a little tough to see, I apologize. And yeah, my light doesn't work on the TV screens. But that yellow kind of hatched area that you see all through there, that is the existing open space that has been dedicated through that when Andrew talked about the series of minor subdivisions. So that's open space that has been previously dedicated. And some of that is, I think one of you mentioned Berwick had like 2 some acres dedicated. So that is part of that yellow there. And I think there was a little bit from when Memorial Gardens was created across 460. So that's the existing open space. And then here's the new dedicated open space that we end up adding to that. And that's where we end up, the subdivision ordinance requires us to dedicate 50%, but because of some of those additional areas that were kind of tacked on to this property, we're at more than 50% right now. And you can see all that, and as we said, the land goes across existing Farmingdale Lane. That's Mr. Chuck Shaver's property, and his house is over there. He has no intentions at this time of doing anything on the north side of Farmingdale Lane. And this is our proposed subdivision. Andrew did a good job of pointing out we've got these lots that are one of our variance requests, the 50 foot to the intersection. I hope y'all can foresee to approve that. Be happy to answer any questions about that. And then one thing I wanted to mention that was some questions at the neighborhood meeting, and then I think also at the Planning Commission work session. Our subdivision right now with 20 lots, we do not trip the need for a turn lane or a taper or any improvements to the 460 intersection. I've worked with Jesse Miller with VDOT on this, and he recommended, and Mr. Lucas agreed, to put in a deceleration taper and an acceleration taper, they're different sizes, on Farmingdale Lane to provide a little bit of additional comfort in people getting off of 460 if they're coming from Giles County direction, or when they're pulling out and going south on 460 towards the town of Blacksburg. So we've done that. He's worked with us on that, and that'll be part of the overall subdivision plans when they're submitted and reviewed by both VDOT and the town of Blacksburg to be approved. So we'll get back to the head spinning stage. So what we have, and at the end of the Planning Commission work session the last time, we thought we had what appeared to be a general consensus among folks of what we would propose and what would be acceptable. And that was to dedicate right-of-way to the edge of the Bach property, which is our blue line is where our road, where Farmingdale Lane, we're proposing to construct Farmingdale Lane to that point right there. Mr. Kyle, you'd said the high point is about at the intersection of the new subdivision street. So there is a portion of that is going downhill down to that blue line there. We have a little bit of pavement there, about 75 feet, maybe 100, maybe something like that, 80 feet. And then as you can see, the brown that you see there, that is the existing Farmingdale Lane gravel road that exists. And there is a 50-foot right-of-way or a 50-foot private access easement on that, all the way to the Shaver property. And we're proposing that it is really unnecessary to build that right now. It is in an existing 50-foot access easement. We don't see any reason to build that. It's unnecessary land disturbance, and we don't really see any need to dedicate it at this time. There's no need, and we could not dedicate it on the existing road because that is over Mrs. Bach's property. So one of the things that we discussed a little bit with staff was like, well, you can take it around the Bach property, but then it wouldn't be on the existing road. So we don't see where that makes a whole lot of practical sense. And with there being an existing 50-foot access easement, at some point in the future, if the rest of the Shaver property was developed or Mr. Jimmy Shaver wanted to develop his property, that 50-foot access easement provides the expectation of that, how that road would go in the future. And there's that picture. I think I showed that to you all at the work session. Kind of that red line. We're stopping about where you see the view from, where the camera is setting effectively. And that red out there is where that right-of-way would be dedicated. We don't see a need to dedicate that right-of-way and or take it off of that existing road. And I don't know, Andrew, could you go back to your thing that showed the yellow lines, if that's okay? Mm-hmm. I think there was a little bit of confusion, and I think the staff report recommended that our dedication to the Bach property was taking us to an adjoining property, correct? The way I read the staff report?
It is an adjoining property.
Yeah. So that's the reason we went ahead and dedicated to the Bach property, 50-foot right-of-way dedication. And I probably, unfortunately, led to this confusion. The yellow lines were just 2-3 examples of where you might dedicate a right-of-way, not necessarily that we were saying that's where we were going to dedicate the right-of-way. That was one of my illustrations of that it does not make sense to dedicate, I want to say it was 4,000 feet along the bottom line, to dedicate a bunch of right-of-way when there has been zero planning for anything beyond the 20 lots that we've got. We did set up the road, and we asked for the variance to make the T turnaround so that people won't have the potential expectation that, like, hey, this cul-de-sac, that's it. There's nothing ever happening more. So we want to make sure that the 20 families that end up buying lots there and living there know that at some point, whether it's 2 years or 20 years or 100 years, that road will probably be extended. But I personally don't think, and I've been on this property and looked at it a little bit, I personally don't think that 4,000 feet line is the place for the road to go, or the trail to go, to be honest with you. Up against 460, depending, and there's a multitude of different options in the future, and we don't think it makes good practical sense to lock those things down in a right-of-way that will then just have to get unwound at some point in the future. And that's the same thing with the 1,900 feet one up there. We were just showing a couple of options. Really, the entirety of that property should have been yellow, is that road could really go anywhere. But we don't think that makes a lot of sense. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
And do you have any images that show how much addition? It's a little confusing because there were so many other projects that use the open space here, and you showed us what had been given before, and you showed us what would be now. But is there any image that shows the additional open space that you guys are putting aside?
Other than me doing this right here?
Yeah.
Not really. Sorry.
So
we added a bunch. You see where it says new lot A?
Uh-huh.
We added a bunch right there and carved out a square for a home site for lot A. So that'd be a home site for lot A. And then over on, oops, I went the wrong way, I'm sorry. And then new lot B, you can see kind of the white that comes up there and notches in. We picked up quite a bit of that area and cut all that, took that to open space. So from there to there. And then we added some down at Farmingdale Lane where it says new lot C. If you see that, right where new lot C is, we added a bunch right there as well. And then some on Mr. Chuck Shaver's home site, his home lot on the right-hand side of Farmingdale.
That is unbuildable space, or
Dedicated as-
undevelopable.
Undevelopable, dedicated as open space, yes, sir.
Explain the different colors and what they represent, John, if you could.
That was one of my survey guys putting on the plat to try to define acreages and things like that. It was not really, it doesn't mean anything other than an accounting system to...
But it's all open space.
It's all open space, yes, sir. Yeah, there's no difference between open space 6, open space 5, open space 4, other than the color on the page. And for his survey and calculating areas and accounting purposes.
So what's left, John, that can be developed? Is it just the white areas?
Yes, sir.
So, okay.
Now, so
I guess what I'm getting at, if it's just the white areas, if you go back to Andrew's map again, the one that runs diagonally 45 degrees up to the northeast view there of the map, that's the only one that would really get built. The 4,000 feet one going along parallel to 460, even if it wasn't parallel to 460 but just squiggled around there, it's all in open space, so there's nothing to be developed there anyway.
Yeah.
So that's
Highly unlikely. Obviously,
as
someone,
a road, but now you could still have a trail through there.
and obviously someone at some point in the future could buy those lots and buy some of the adjacent property and end up coming in with a rezoning proposal and doing something completely different,
If they had other property somewhere else that they're dedicating
Right.
to open space that they're losing here.
And they'd have to come back to the Planning Commission and Town Council to do all that.
So really the 4,000 foot long line doesn't really represent a road under any scenario that you would have in developing this property.
I think that's correct. Yes, sir. I agree. The one thing that is happening is there is a portion of property that was dedicated, I think, fee simple, for the trail that is up against the 460 right away.
Okay.
I don't think it's very practical to put the trail there, but
So that could be relocated
Right.
in the future with the cooperation of the owner. Okay.
Right. Yes.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Thank you, John. Okay, so we will begin our public comment period, and I just remind everybody to state your name and address when you come up to speak for the record, please. Do we have any public comment? Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Annette Bach, Professor Emerita, Housing and Environment. Thank you in advance for the opportunity to speak at this meeting. I attended the neighborhood meeting and voiced my primary concern at that one. I'll reinstate that one also. I'm here to represent myself, who has a vested interest in this project, because if you notice on the diagram that you've been shown, my property is directly in the middle, surrounded 4 sides by this plan. I used to tell my friends this is my horse island, but it's actually my wildlife island now, which has recently been impacted just by the removal of the trees next to 460. The squirrels, the rabbits, coyotes, bears, we coexist. They travel down to my pond to drink and go on their merry way. Recently, the squirrels have been relocated, and either they're angry or just hungry. They've destroyed many of my trees by my pond because they've stripped the bark, and I just learned that squirrels don't eat the bark. They strip the bark to get to the wonderful nectar inside the tree. But I've noticed damage already just by the simple removal of trees adjacent to pasture. Representing myself, because I have a direct vested interest in this project, because I have I have 3 springs, natural springs on my property, and a beautiful pond on which Mother Goose is sitting on her eggs as we speak. And I have the 3 springs there, but especially what concerns me is the spring in the southeast corner of my pasture. It is directly on this plan. There is a stormwater waste management pond here. Okay, so looking at that is my main concern. To be brief, my main concern is that stormwater management pond. But even me back up in space here too. I stopped at the bank tonight because I wanted to be sure to talk about my initial involvement in this project. How much money should I take for my property? I was approached by the developer several months ago who suggested buying some of my pasture. And I said, no, not for sale at this time. Money can blind you sometimes. So not for sale at this time. And then he said, I'd also be interested in your house, your residence, but then you wouldn't have any place to live. Money doesn't always talk.
Thank you, Ms. Bach.
But my main concern with the stormwater, stormwater management pond that's been constructed adjacent the whole length of my pasture, my property line, I object to the inclusion of this pond because, first of all, construction of and existence of this stormwater pond will affect the quality and quantity of my water runoff, potentially leading to soil erosion and sediment-laden runoff. Secondly, this will in turn impact downstream water bodies, my neighbors down the road, and also the ecosystem health. Living near a detention pond impacts daily living, for example, safety risks to children and pets, maintenance issues leading to odor and pest problems, flooding concerns, even if it's only every 100 years. When the enclosure's capacity is reached and causes localized flooding. Therefore, addressing my main concern tonight is that this item, the stormwater management pond, be either erased or revised in this plan.
Thank you, Professor Fox.
Comments tonight, and since our neighborhood meeting, I've been in contact with the state DEQ office and had many questions answered by them and also by your town engineers, which I greatly appreciate. But what I want you to notice is that this is all these pictures and plans tonight, they're two-dimensional. You don't see the three-dimensional aspect that I do when I sit on my back porch in the morning with my cup of coffee, watching the birds, the bears, the geese, whatever.
Thank you, Ms. Bach. You're 2 minutes over now, and I have to, out of respect for the other speakers, stop you, but I thank you very much.
My concerns. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll just remind those who would like to comment to try to limit your speaking to 3 minutes, and there's a timer there for you with some lights to indicate when you're getting close.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Tina Shaver. I live at 513 Farmingdale Lane. We are just mostly concerned, I'm mostly just concerned about the right-of-way. We'd like to deny the 5303. You know, approximately 50 years ago, the community of Farmingdale Lane was implemented, and you know, there were indications that we would get water, sewer, and all this other stuff that we don't. So, but we do pay all the taxes, and we pay water runoff, of which we have no sewer system over there, so we're paying for something that doesn't really exist. The thing, you know, Miss Bach, if you could see the property, it kind of goes like this, and Miss Bach is right down here, and it's really going to affect her, the water runoff. And Miss Long too, Michelle Long. It's, you know, the water's going to run downhill, and she's got this beautiful little pond. It's been there forever. It's a natural pond. It's a lot of nature there. The water runoff would completely destroy that, if you see. And where they're proposing to stop the road, and you guys know yourself that if you stop pavement onto gravel halfway down a hill, it's just going to destroy that, and we're going to have to keep maintaining that. And, you know, I don't have an issue with the housing development. I just don't think that we should be financially responsible to take care of more damage to the road than we already are. And, you know, we just, a gravel road up to Mr. Jimmy Shaver's property, you know, it doesn't need to be stopped down halfway down the hill. It needs to be at a good place to prevent the erosion. And that's just what we're asking for, to, you know, end the road up at Jimmy Shaver's. You know, really, it like Ms. Bach said, the 3D version would show you more of what we're talking about, but the runoff would be really affect her and really affect Ms. Long and the rest of us, because we all have to pitch in and maintain the road, and we'd just like for you to consider that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Sure.
Joel Herbine, 515 Farmingdale Lane. Seems like you guys might need another work session. My focus is going to be on the road as well. So borrowing Andrew's slide here, our contention, the citizens and landowners beyond the yellow line on the right that live up what is Farmingdale Lane proper right now. We have advocated for the applicant on the two lines on the left saying that we don't think that those are necessary, and we do think that a roadway to the end of the yellow line on the right, which would adjoin to the current 30-foot right-of-way on Farmingdale, would satisfy code. So if you were to deny the 5303 variance and a road would be dedicated and built to that point, it would satisfy a lot of problems that exist right now. So the problem that we have is the current right-of-way has no road agreement that satisfies maintenance of that road. So we have a road that is going over 6 different parcels owned by various numbers of people. This development, any development, has the right to take on the responsibility and provide a road to adjoining parcels. I am in, and we are in complete disagreement that Ms. Bach's property is an adjoining parcel when it is in the middle of the development. That is not adjoining. Adjoining is beyond. So what we ask is for the 503 variant or the 5303 variance for you to deny that. That gives everybody the natural right. It takes care of everything. It provides for a public right-of-way, so that satisfies our access issues as well as our maintenance issues to be able to access our property in the future. And they have a responsibility to put that on their development and take care of some of these issues that we have with where the road is currently placed. Because of where the road is now, that doesn't really matter when it comes to code. They need to build a road. They need to provide a right-of-way. The problem is if you accept that variance and you accept the road on the right as the only delineator for 5303, is you will have that piece of road there with no maintenance agreement. There's nothing codified. Who's responsible for it? Is the developer responsible for it? Are we responsible for it? There's nothing codified for the maintenance agreement for that road. And as Tina just said, we do not have any way to make restitution for water coming down the new public road for us to have to be able to maintain that. So we're just asking for a reasonable assessment for that. So my recommendation would be, if you do choose to vote tonight, the best thing you can do is deny 5303 variance, because then what can happen is the developer can still build their development. We are protected as the citizens beyond this development. And if the applicant wants to come back and ask for another variance, then what he could do is he could sit down with us and come up with a middle ground. How are we going to take care of the maintenance issue and the deficiencies that are in the road now? So that is my recommendation for your options. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Additional public comment? Okay, then we have an opportunity for applicant rebuttal.
If you wouldn't mind putting my presentation back up, if you don't mind. I understand Ms. Bach's concern on the stormwater. I would absolutely love it if we did not have to build any additional pond or manage the stormwater, but that's not the way it works. We need to take care of the stormwater, the additional stormwater that we create, and manage both the rate, more importantly, than the volume. And our stormwater management concept plan has been approved by the town staff, town engineering staff. There is about 60 acres of land across 460. I think it's 60, right at 60 acres, that comes under 460 in a pipe and then expands back out and kind of goes through this property and then goes down into Miss Bach's pond. And that's one of the ways she's able to kind of maintain. She's got her springs, but also there's a lot of runoff that comes through that way over time. But we will be managing that stormwater and working with the town staff before it enters her property. But one of the things, one of the questions, concerns that I heard was the road that we're building that does, after it tops over the hill, we've got a little section of road that we were building, working with the town staff, and we built it to the ends of the lots, the backs of the lots, right there, that blue line that you can see over on the bottom right-hand side. So I want to point out, and I'll do this one first. So this is part of our stormwater management plan that you probably all don't see because you just see the plat and the variance and stuff. There's 2 curb inlets that are planned at the end of the pavement that are right there at the top. You can kind of see the more kind of solid gray that goes down in the gravel road. We have 2 curb inlets right there that's at the end of that pavement that pick up the stormwater from the paved road and take it over to our stormwater facility. So we will actually be reducing the amount of runoff that is coming down that gravel road, both in volume and in rate. There will be a small triangle, so not to get too technical, but a road has a cross slope that's crowned, and so those curb inlets are sitting on either side of that cross slope. So there's a small portion triangle of that pavement that will go down the gravel road, but the net will be a reduction in the water runoff that goes down that gravel road. So that will actually be an improvement to the
Even
site.
when you account for the fact that it's paved now?
Yeah, so we're picking up their curb inlets. So all the water goes onto either side of the road,
Understood.
and our curb inlets pick that up. Yeah, so there will be a small amount of square footage that you don't pick up because of the way the water does this. So those curb inlets, there's a small triangle, probably no bigger than this area in front of me in the dais here, that would not be picked up by those curb inlets. But all the way up to the top of the hill, which is about at that driveway there that you can see at the bottom of the page, all of that water that falls on that gravel road right now and continues to flow down the gravel road will be picked up. Are you following me?
I am, but I want to make sure you're taking into account that one is pervious and one is impervious, even after you account for that.
So the gravel road is pretty impervious.
It's pretty impervious because
Yeah.
it's so.
Yeah. It's pretty impervious. There's very little difference in that gravel road and a paved road. So we're actually, there's going to be a net decrease in runoff onto that gravel road. And then back to the question, so here's the existing 50-foot private access easement that's dedicated back in 2000, Andrew?
2000, correct.
I think. That was dedicated from, and this is all over Chuck Shaver's property from the right-hand side to the left-hand side, and it's actually dedicated on Jimmy Shaver's property, which is up at the top of the left-hand top of the page there. You can see where that access easement goes over Ms. Bach's property. So we are proposing to dedicate it to the second red line going to the left, and the first red line is our end of our pavement, end of our street. So that's a small portion. And I also want to point out there was some concern about the maintenance responsibilities of everyone. If you'll recall, I said we're building 665 feet of a possible 829. All of that responsibility that right now rests on all the various property owners, or I think as Mr. Herbine said, some people are not party to their maintenance agreement that they have right now. Those people are just responsible for what's on their land. And I would contend that a private road maintenance needs to stay private among the property owners and be worked out privately and not through a town action. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Additional questions from planning commissioners?
And I guess the last thing is, I think based on the staff report, we technically do not need the 5303, right, Andrew?
So as far as the extension, I mean, that would be planning commission's decision of whether that extension would be needed. I mean, I think that was, there was a conversation with Ms. O'Shea regarding that would still be the intention that, that there's certainly, I do think that the point, the staff report was that that does meet, 5303, whether there's a need to connect to the adjoining property at the Jimmy Shaver, that would be, a decision of planning commission.
Happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. No questions? Fabulous. All right, we get to move on next to motion and discussion. We have to have some kind of motion in order to discuss. We would need to take action on each of the variance requests. And I just want to put out there to you guys, especially since there are some commissioners who weren't at the work session, that we do have an option to take action on the variances that we feel comfortable taking action on, we feel decided. And then if we need additional information from staff or the applicant, we could continue such that we would have access to another work session. But we should, only do that if we really need it. And so I hope that someone's willing to make a motion so we can have discussion, and then we'll move forward.
Can you put up the ones? Is there an easy format to see them?
Sure, for the variances, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
So the first one was the one that you did spend, more time talking about. The three below are the ones that were.
And so ultimately, if we were going to do it all, we would do all 4 separately, right?
Correct.
We
Yeah.
discuss them together, though.
You could, right.
I'm just,
yeah.
like if I were to make a motion, do I need to make a motion for the T turnaround, and then we do that one, and then we have to do another one for the 50-foot driveways, or can I combine those 2 together?
I think if you made a motion, yeah, for the ones that you felt comfortable taking, and then discussing them together, so,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, I move the Planning Commission recommend, oh wait, we're not recommending, we're deciding, the Planning Commission approve variance section 5-310A regarding T turnaround instead of bulb cul-de-sac, and variance for section 5-318D to allow driveways closer than 50 feet to an intersection.
A second.
Discussion, friends, on those 2 middle variance requests.
Since I made the motion, I'll start. It makes sense with the T turnarounds. I like the idea that communicates to folks, things are great. Things are where they are now, but there's always the potential for future. It seems it makes sense from road engineering. So I'm fine with that one. When we did the Glade Spring crossing rezoning, and then what we've worked with the small lot subdivision, both of those we've had to address smaller lots, the requirement of the 50 feet by the intersections, and we've either given variances, but now the small lot also kind of, I think, embraces some of the technicality of that. So for me, both of those seem to make sense.
I agree.
I agree.
Me too.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on those? Okay. No further discussion? Fabulous. All right, so we'll take a vote on just 5-310A and 5-318D. All of those in favor of the motion, which is to approve, say aye.
Aye.
All of those that do not.
Opposed.
Yes, that oppose. Okay, we're unanimous on those. All right, now do I have another motion?
I move that we table the other one so we have one more work session. I'm very sensitive to the property rights of people, and that it's very costly to come back and forth. But in this particular case, it seems complex enough that I think one more work session would be in order.
Can we have discussion based on tabling?
Well, we need a second to that motion, and then we can discuss.
can discuss
I would
the time.
second that.
Okay, now we can discuss.
And just as a point of clarification.
Yeah, Blaine, you have some
Well,
discussion.
no, I'm thinking about it, because I guess I learned some new things about the 5-303 tonight that I wasn't aware of before, or maybe if I should have been aware of them, I apologize, but I was not. I guess if we're going to have a work session to discuss this one, I'd like to have some very clear questions that we perhaps can get answers to at the work session so it's productive. I guess one of those is staff has made a determination that a road to essentially what is a landlocked piece of property is in fact an extension of a right-of-way to an adjacent piece of property. And I'd just like to maybe have staff clarify that at the work session, and maybe from the legal opinion from the town, perhaps the town attorney could give us some information on that as well. Does that meet the intent of what that is? You don't have to answer it tonight. Just be able to discuss that at the time. And then I guess in the larger thing, I don't quite understand why we're even really looking at this. When regardless of whether it's under 20 lots or over 50 lots or under 50 lots, if we're still looking at this piecemeal. And I guess I would like that may be more of a discussion for our retreat. We get a clarification as to why we're looking at this when we don't understand the larger context of what's going on.
And Blaine, you understand, though, that it's required by law for us to do this?
I do. I do understand that, but the context of what information we know up front in order to make a determination seems to me to merit a little bit more discussion. I kind of feel like that sometimes that Planning Commission is put in a position to make a recommendation to Town Council, and we're the last ones to know anything before the Corridor Committee knows, and all these other committees know before it even gets to us. There's been discussion with staff, and it's kind of like working behind the 8 ball, and then we have to ask the questions that appear to be critical all the time, and that's I don't want to feel like I'm a judge. I'd rather be productive and have some positive input. Again, that's getting away from this, but that's the one thing I would like to know about that right-of-way situation is going to a landlocked piece of property. Does that meet the intention? And if it does, then how is that any different than the other 2 yellow lines that could be just anywhere? I mean, again, it's just the commitment to do that sometime in the future.
But it does seem like a relevant question now, whether the landlocked property counts as the next adjoining.
And that's why I think if we'd have a work session again, I think that's the key question for me now.
Fairly technical question for a layperson like me.
Well,
I haven't seen anything from the legal counsel about it.
That you do, I do think you do have discretion, and in interpreting this wording of, that an adjoining property, and again, I mean, happy to provide additional information to you all, but again, I do think that we'd be happy to provide additional information.
Well, my inclination is to support staff in that, in that determination.
I also want to point out to Planning Commission that our decisions need to be based primarily on the comprehensive plan. So I think that, the information that we have in the comprehensive plan and probably the most relevant information to the necessary for the orderly extension, which is sort of the important words, we need to decide if it's necessary for the orderly extension, is our paths to the future map. So if we go to an additional work session, I likewise will ask staff to make sure that we have an overlay of the paths to the future with this site and the open space, because the developability of this is also in question. And a lot of what we discussed in the work session was indeed that open space and where there was possibility for development. And I think that that is part of what drew us to some conclusions originally in the work session about where we thought this right-of-way made sense. So I just want to reiterate that I think in order for the Planning Commission, based on what we're supposed to think about, to make a decision about the necessary for the orderly extension, we have to have an overlay of the paths to the future on this site. Because that, is kind of what we're meant to make decisions based on, beyond staff recommendations, which I agree we also have to consider. Yeah.
I'd build on that and say that from a practical standpoint, going back to the trail, it appears that the trail that doesn't want to be built does line up with the pathways. And, you know, that's connecting through that property to other properties down the line. So, if it's not built by these folks, what are the likelihood that it's going to be built by anyone but public monies in the future? And two, both with the question about the road access and whatnot, and this, I don't want to see anything done here that limits the ability for anything thoughtful, deliberate, and methodical to be done with the rest of the basin. As you know, we have a Toms Creek Basin study coming forward that will inform a lot of decisions. Mm-hmm. This has come before us now. They got in line before all that's there. They're going by right. That's fine, but I don't want us to make, and I do not intend on making any decisions that precludes best possible planning and implementation in the future.
And just to clarify, the by right situation means that if we deny one of these variances, they can still go ahead.
Yes, they just have to
just
meet the
don't have that
standards.
variance.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like to add that I do have a question regarding what, like you say, there's orderly extension of the town's transportation system, but I do have the same question about this. What is the meaning of adjoining in this circumstance? So that can't be a matter of opinion, I don't think. I think we need clarity and discussion of that, because it does seem to sort of violate the intent when a property is in fact surrounded. And I just want clarity. It's not even about, I mean, I literally would not be ready to vote on this because I don't fully understand or feel confident that I understand that piece of that.
I have all good points. I have one more question about the open space map with the various colors. There's 7 open space areas designated on that map. Are those to account for 7 other developments that are using this property as open space?
No, it isn't. It really was,
No.
you know, what Mr. Neal was showing was basically an accounting that his firm had used for getting the
Right, but this is being shared as open space with other developments we just talked about, Bearwick and others. And
right. And we do have a, staff has gone back during this process and
Okay.
painstakingly kind of laid out where the open spaces come from and when it was dedicated. We do have that information.
And that would be good to know, quite honestly, of how many acres of the 106, is that what we said, 108?
108.
How much of that is dedicated already to open space before we even get to this project?
Well, and then we do have a map of what's already dedicated. It's that yellowy.
And that's, yeah, okay, and that is how many acres? Yeah, but I mean, that's just,
So this is what's already dedicated based on other
so
development.
23 acres.
And then the difference between this and this is what is just for this
Okay.
property. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what was the confusing part is that the yellow map is so random-ish, at least on a plan, whereas the other one is very orderly and kind of looks more logical. But so anyway,
I'm sure that the other one is just the mostly
Engineers.
undevelopable space, you know? Yeah. Okay, so
I do have something to add. The applicant has indicated that that they would be willing to dedicate the right-of-way to the Jimmy Shaver property, you know, based on, you know, the conversation this evening. So I do think
In other
that
words, to withdraw.
there is a, so this area, the applicant is willing to dedicate it. I do think there are some town considerations, you know, as far as if it is to go into a right-of-way, you know, the expectations of maintenance, you know, that would be, that there has been a limit, you know, the town has not accepted this road before, and I mean, basically, it is not up to town standards. We do not maintain gravel roads in other instances that I'm aware of, and that so I do think that that would have to be looked at a little bit more, and to what would be the responsibility of the town in acceptance of this gravel road.
So you're saying that the town would really only be interested in it if it's built?
Well, again, I mean, that would be part of the question of,
Yeah, because they're proposing in this plan to build to the Bach property.
correct.
But what you're saying is just
No.
now.
Headline
Wait,
goes
wait,
to the
wait.
Bach.
Just
No
Oh, no, they're
dedicate to
proposing to
the
dedicate.
back of their lots.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's right, my bad. Yep,
But
yep, yep.
dedicate to the
This would be dedicated right
Yep,
of.
I'm sorry.
But if I understand what you just said, and it's possible I don't, the applicant is in this meeting deciding to withdraw the variance request for 5303.
No,
No.
not entirely. They're
Modify.
offering to, modify
Modify.
the variance.
Modify.
And we don't know
Well,
what that would be.
they would be willing to dedicate right of way through here to the, is that what I'm asking? And if you would like to ask the applicant to come back up, he may be able to clarify
So
the changing information.
I understand what you're talking about, but I think that there's more in question from planning commissioners regarding both the trail and the other two dedications. So I don't think that that's going to change the motion that's on the table. So I would prefer not to have the applicant back. Do you agree with that, Andrew?
So it would be a matter of the consideration of tabling it or continuing.
Continuing
Until the
to
next
the
meeting.
next meeting, correct.
Well, I agree. I think the tabling makes sense to me.
And I just want to clarify language to everyone. Continuing is what we're able to do here, and that will just allow us the work session. And then we will continue this public hearing, have public comment again in the next public hearing moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree we need to do that if we can have some very specific questions we want answered. Otherwise, we're just going to be like on the wheel in the cage, you know.
I agree. If more public comment introduces new evidence that we'd never heard about before, we'll find ourselves once again in the position of not understanding the facts. If we don't have the facts, we can't offer a helpful recommendation. And it feels tonight as if we've heard some new facts that weren't heretofore introduced.
Okay, so I'm ready for voting.
So actually, I guess before we do, I mean, I know they made the motion to, I guess their motion was to continue.
It is to, it would be to continue to the next meeting.
My one process question would be, when at the other level, when we continue, sometimes we do close the public comment period, right? And we continue to the next meeting so that there won't be an additional public comment period?
Right, well, so I do believe the public hearing was closed before action was taken on the other two variances.
Right.
So it would be a matter of, it would be under old business.
It would be on old business, and we would, okay. So there would not, I guess that's a clarification for some of the members, is that we would continue it, and at the next, it would be old business. There wouldn't be another public comment period.
There might be another work session.
Yes,
Yeah,
there
but
will
that's
be
not
another work
the
session.
actual public comment.
One hopes that the work session would include relevant information that we would need to make a good decision.
But not public comment.
But not public.
Not public comment.
Right.
Okay. Are we ready? Do we have more discussion?
So those questions that we want to have answered, do we provide those to you beforehand, Andrew, or do we need to hash those questions out tonight?
Well, and so I think that we have discussed a number of those tonight. If planning commissioners have additional questions or information they would like from staff, I would prefer for them to have that to staff by tomorrow at noon. Okay, you've got to do that quickly so staff can get prepared. Then now, do we have any more comments? All right. Okay, so we'll move to a vote. All of those in favor of continuing this public hearing to the next public hearing date next month, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? None? Okay. That closes our discussion for tonight on.
That was a tabling of both the remaining items, which was the trail and
Yes, correct.
the right-of-way dedication.
Okay, and so then we will move on to general citizen comment. Would anyone else like to address the Planning Commission on any subject matter? Mr. Irvine, welcome.
Joel Irvine, 515 Farmingdale Lane. I hate to be that guy, and I'm not sure if I'm right about this, but you all didn't vote on the plat for the applicant. I think they would like their plat approval.
I don't know if we're allowed to approve the plat without
Okay.
the variances.
I wasn't sure. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure.
No,
We didn't leave them hanging on that.
No, thank you, though.
That guy.
He's a good parliamentarian,
Yes,
isn't he?
indeed. Okay. Any other citizen comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, we shall move on to unfinished business. Zoning Ordinance Review Committee has not met, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't think we
Okay.
know.
Historic or Design Review Board?
We've met, but there's nothing to report.
Okay. Montgomery County Planning Commission, did anyone attend?
I was going to go to both the February meetings, but both were snowed out.
Oh, goodness. Well then, shall look forward to the next ones. Additional items from planning commissioners this evening. Okay, moving on to new business. Chair, I am not the usual chair. I do not have a report tonight. Planning director's report.
The only thing I have is that Casey had sent out an email to folks reminding them of the planning commissioners training that is at in Montgomery County, that is sponsored by the Regional Commission, and it's always a nice event to get together with other planning commissioners and share a meal and then have some educational opportunities. And I think it'll be quite entertaining this year as well. So
The food is good.
the food is typically good, yes. And so we had asked for, if you could let us know, I believe it's in the email. But
Yes, it is. Montgomery County has requested a deadline of April 9th.
April 9th.
I would prefer, just so we can get our check request in, the day before, April 8th, please.
So if you wouldn't mind
Let me
letting
know
Casey
if
know by April 8th, you plan to attend. Thank you, that's all I had.
Okay, and town council report?
I was just going to tell everyone we're starting on the budget.
Oh, goody.
Stay tuned.
All right, friends. Well, with all of those items addressed, we shall adjourn.